A lot of people who get involved in tennis, they might notice this type of pattern, which is kids come into tennis, maybe at kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They might get into it, they start training really hard, increasing hours, they kind of start playing tournaments, get into like being 11, 12, 13, 14, and then they suddenly vanish. And all of a sudden then we might then see people who are 35, 40, 45 years old, kind of look like they're all right at tennis, and you go up to them and say, oh, you play well, and they say, oh yeah, I used to play as a kid, I gave up when I was 14, 15, came back now as a 35, 40-year-old, and I've decided to take it up again. So what's going on? Why do so many seem to stop only to come back decades later? So I don't know how it is in other countries, but you definitely do see, you've got sort of stage 3, 2 and 1 tennis, which is the red, orange and green ball. And then at 11, kids typically transition across to the tennis ball, the yellow ball. And it seems like there are heaps of kids, probably in like the under 10s, under 11s, under 12s, still in the under 14s, but then all of a sudden, under 16s, under 18s, it seems like it doesn't exist anymore. Even in under 14s, particularly on the girls' side, you see there's a lot less playing than, let's say, in the boys. And then on the other end of the scale, you've got lots of adults playing tennis, probably more like in their 40s, 50s, and then lots sort of in their 50s, 60s, 70s, particularly what are they doing? They're playing a lot of club doubles. But after, whether it's 14, 15, 16, sort of mid to late teens, I guess, 20s, even in 30s, you tend to see tennis just kind of stops for people. And when you compare it to a game like football, for example, where while there is probably a similar drop-off to some degree in terms of really competitive football, you still see people in their late teens, in their 20s doing, whether it's 5-a-side, 6-a-side, Sunday league, there seems to still be a lot of participation even through those late teens and 20s. So I'm not really going to give answers because the answer is I don't know the answer. It's more, these are my observations. And being a father of 3 young children who are all 11 and under, it's really sort of intriguing to me and does make me think, you know, where does the next 3, 4, 5 years go for my kids? In terms of possible reasons, well, think about it. When kids turn 15, 16, they start getting into, school, exams, thinking of higher education. They get friends, relationships, maybe even sort of hit 16, they're getting part-time jobs. But then, of course, it could be about the fact that bodies are changing, confidence changes and shifts, and suddenly sport doesn't necessarily feel like the top priority. But then is there also something deeper? Tennis, particularly in this country, we do seem to get our kids into it really seriously at a really young age. We see kids at tennis courts who are 5, 6, 7 years old who suddenly are doing a lot of hours and getting seriously into it, whether that's because there's this kind of idea that if you're not doing it from when basically you're born, then, you're not going to make it as a professional. So you kind of question, are kids playing too much too soon? I've seen personally my daughter going into tournament playing other 11, 12-year-old girls who, you look on their records and they've done 500 matches already, albeit a lot of those are tie breaks when they're playing on the red ball, for example. But the question there is, have they played too much, too soon, too young, and, they kind of burn out? But then there's another thing that it could be, which is whether you call it the opt-in problem. So I know this personally from looking at, particularly my kids are 8, 9 and 11. And my 11-year-old who's just started secondary school, so 11 plus, it only feels now that she's actually really becoming very conscious of what she's doing. And now she's choosing to say, I want to do this. It's not like we've made her do it, but she's sort of consciously saying, I actually want to do this, I'm opting in. For my 2 younger ones, I don't think they've made that decision yet. I think we're taking them along to the tennis courts and they're happy to go, but they're not bugging us saying, yeah, I've opted in, this is the life I want to pursue. And so you do think around 11, 12, 13, and probably incrementally, the kids suddenly start going, do you know what, I didn't actually choose to do this, and now I think about it, maybe I don't want to do it. And so maybe we could kind of say, do kids quit at 13, 14, 15? But in fact, actually, they're not quitting because maybe they never decided to do it in the first place. And so actually what we're seeing is they get to a certain age where if they do leave the sport, they're making their own decision for the first time. And it is, I don't necessarily want to do this. But then there is also a question maybe to say around the structure and culture of tennis, particularly in this country. Because it seems like we've got two kind of key states. One is at a junior level, it all seems geared around competition, tournaments. It gets serious really, really fast. Then the other side of it is around club doubles, which, yes, that can become competitive, but it's kind of, I would say it's socially competitive. Seems like there's a lot more fun, but yeah, you do get some people that compete there, but it's not the same kind of setup as it is for the juniors. So you could kind of ask, actually, do people leave this because they get fed up with the ultra competitive environment? And actually, sometimes do they just want to say, couldn't we just have something like in football where you just go for an evening, do 5-a-side and win, lose or draw? Do you know what? We have a lot of fun with this. But then even, and I've experienced this, finding tournaments in this country. So let's say if you are a kind of, maybe you're a 16, 18-year-old, maybe you're a sort of 20-year-old or mid-20s, finding tournaments to compete in and actually have people participating, you're typically driving 40, 50, 60 miles or even more, and you're turning up and maybe playing in a tournament with 5 or 6 other people. It doesn't seem like we've got this real sort of local setup where there's a lot of competition when you're going, say, 16 plus, but then you're under 30 or 35, which could then say maybe it's not just sort of you personally burn out. Maybe we have a system that means that it's actually, unless you opt fully into going hard out into competition and tournaments, you can't actually stay connected to this casually. It's kind of you're all in or you're out, perhaps. So for me, again, I've got young children. I do spend a lot of time thinking around, how much should I push them? If they say they want to do really well, is it worth it? Because is there a chance that they spend all this time and just get to 14 and then drop out? Well, fortunately, I kind of take the view, which is, it's all an experience. I know from being a junior, I actually loved playing tournaments. I did give up, I would say really full-time sort of going at tennis when I was 16, when I wasn't doing full-time exactly, but just going every day. I kind of stopped that when I was around 16, probably more as well, 17, get a car, start getting girlfriends, that sort of thing. And you kind of start going, don't really want to do tennis every single day. And it seemed like everyone sort of had similar things. Everyone just disappeared. But you know what, for me, I keep thinking it was a great experience for me. I'm sure my kids will love it if they choose to stay in it 12, 13, 14, and however much longer. And if at the end we can go down the courts and have a really great battle, whether it's with my daughters or with my son, and kind of get to do that, do you know what? I know how much fun that is. I know they'll enjoy it. So whatever else happens, well, I guess que sera, sera. So my closing thoughts are, I'm not really giving any answers here because I don't have the answers. It's more to say, I'd love to hear what you think. I'm sure that there may be some parents watching this who have older children. Maybe they have multiple children, one who's been through and has given up for specific reasons, another one that's in it that hasn't given up. Be really interesting to hear your thoughts. But also if, like me, you played tennis as a junior, you quit, you came back, maybe you're going through a similar journey, you've got observations, maybe you've got kids, or you're just seeing this around the clubs you're at, it'd be great to get your perspective as well. But the one thing I will leave on is, you know what, I can't help feeling sometimes it is a shame because for all the hours put in by kids when they are juniors in particular to learn tennis, you kind of think tennis is just too good a game to leave behind.